Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be going through business in context. So we're going to be placing business as a human activity as well as business as a field of study into context to help you understand some common management and other business theories. So we're going to start with a question that seems really obvious, and in some ways it is, but still worth examining. So what we exactly mean by business? Well, a definition of business is fairly simple. It's either an individual or a collection of individuals that have come together to engage in some kind of organized commercial activity. So that's usually for profit, so is producing and or transporting goods and services to sell in order to gain revenue and therefore turn some kind of profit. So it is just generally commercial activity done in an organized fashion. There is, however, quite a stark split between pre-industrial revolution and post-industrial revolution businesses. So pre-industrial revolution, we shouldn't think that this was too primitive. We still had very large enterprises. We had enterprises that stretched across borders. We had global and regional financial networks. So this was still very much a sophisticated enterprise. However, the scale tends to be rather small. So we're looking at fairly small producers by and large, cottage industries, trades and crafts industries dominating commercial activity in most societies pre-industrial revolution. However, post-industrial revolution, we do see larger and larger business enterprises, more and more large-scale commercial activity. Also, the scale of production starts expanding, and therefore the corresponding scale of businesses starts expanding as well in terms of employees, in terms of material, in terms of capacity, in terms of output. So this increasing scale and increasing complexity and increasing use of technology really does demand a different perspective or a different approach to organizing business activities. What we can also say post-industrial revolution is that there is an emerging sense of or emerging distinction between three different sectors when it comes to economic activity and general social activity, organized social activity. So we have the private sector, which consists of private firms, so firms, companies, enterprises which are owned by individuals, not part of the state, so not government run or government owned, which engage in organized commercial activity for profit, so driven by the profit motive. We have also the public sector. So this is and is not just necessarily non-profit. Public sector activity can be for non-profit purposes, for state purposes, but can also engage in commercial activity, but is owned collectively. So either directly by the state or indirectly in the case of public sector universities in the UK, for example. But there, the ownership is firmly collective, state or society-wise. There is a third sector of activity as well. So the voluntary sector comprises of things like civil society organizations, charities, local community groups, which also often engage in activities, sometimes as well commercial activities, but is not driven by the profit motive, nor is it owned directly by the state or collectively. So we do have those three distinct sectors. And because this is focused on businesses, we are going to focus on the private sector, but it's worth pointing out that a lot of these management theories and other business theories are equally applicable to organizations of any of those three types. So there is a lot of overlap between the three sectors in terms of how they run, increasingly so in terms of the public and private sector in the UK at the moment. And that is very much worth bearing in mind. But now we have private sector organizations, businesses in our sights in terms of our focus of our attention. We do have to recognize that businesses operate in a context of their own. So we have two major distinctions between the kinds of contexts that we want to bear in mind. So one would be our internal environment. So the internal environment of a business will include things like its structures, so the way that is organized into departments or divisions, its staff, so the actual employees that are engaged inside of the organization itself, with their skills, the hierarchies that organize them, the ways they actually go about doing different jobs, the division of labor. So all of those things are the internal environment of a business, and that has strengths and weaknesses, and businesses need to identify their strengths and weaknesses in order to leverage their strengths and to try and shore up their weaknesses. But as well as the internal environment, we also have the external environment that businesses operate in as well. So we can break this down into the macro and the micro external environment, but by and large, anything which is outside of the business itself will form part of its external environment. So the micro environment, or the environment closest to the business, will include things like the activity of competitors, the preferences of customers, the interaction with suppliers, all of those things that the business has to operate directly with. And that is, in many cases, a very complex set of external environmental factors to deal with. So there has to be a constant appraisal, a constant evaluation of the external environment that the organization is operating within. But as well as that micro external environment, which is the environment just outside of the organization, so again, customers, suppliers, competitors, and the general marketplace, we also have what we call the external macro environment. So the external macro environment comprises of factors which impact the business in many ways, but are not directly adjacent to it. So things like political factors, legal factors, economic factors, social factors, all of these things are part of the external macro environment, and this has an immense impact on the organization. So if you think about any given business, if they operate within a political framework, which all businesses by and large do, they have to be sensitive to changes in the political environment. So things like Brexit are going to have massive impacts on how businesses operate. And that's very much connected to the overall economic environment as well as the legal environment. So Brexit's not only introducing a raft of economic changes, which will impact a huge range of businesses, there'll also be lots of legal and regulatory changes as well. So businesses have to abide by regulations and laws, lest they get fined or otherwise action is taken against them. And these kinds of situations are dynamic and fluid. So it would be a mistake to say that since a business is operating in, let's say, the UK or France or Russia or South Africa, any given country, that we have a static environment. The environment is always going to be dynamic. There will always be changes. There will always be rapid movement sometimes, but slow movement at other times. But very rarely will there be complete lack of movement in any of these broader social, political, economic, or legal situations. And to add to that as well, at the current moment, humanity is facing an unprecedented environmental catastrophe, unfolding environmental catastrophe. So climate change is not just a potential future thing that's going to happen at some point in 50 years or 100 years, but the impacts of climate change are being felt today. And so this is not just organizations or businesses that directly interact with what we commonly understand to be sources of climate change which are affected. So companies like oil companies, gas companies, or other companies working in that sector. But all companies, by and large, will have to grapple with the climate crisis in different ways. So it could be through the uses of plastic and other environmentally unsustainable materials. Not only is that a rising social trend which will impact the attitudes of the company's customers, it will also have knock-on impacts on regulations and laws and legal systems. It could be the availability of certain resources or the non-availability of those resources as a climate crisis changes the way resources are available and accessible. It could also be the change in climate leading to changes in weather, which change customer patterns, customer preferences, and the demand for particular goods and services. So if we look at the climate crisis in totality, it's going to have a big impact on lots and lots of organizations, lots of businesses, if not every business that's currently operating. And we put that alongside social trends and social changes, and we see just how rapidly society is mutating, changing, evolving, and lots of different social trends and sub-trends in existence that either can have a direct impact on a business through changing composition of its market and its targeted segments, as well as broader impacts on what business practices are and are not acceptable. So in pretty much every aspect of human society, we can see how all of these macro environmental factors will impact businesses fairly directly as well as indirectly. And we add to that all of the micro external environmental factors, so things like what the competitors are doing, how the marketplace looks, the direct interaction with suppliers and customers. We have additional complexity, and then we add on top of that the actual internal environment of the firm as well. So looking at exactly how organizations make use of their internal resources, their employees, their staff, their organization. We have a very rapidly shifting, complex picture. And that's something which will affect all organizations, so private, public, and voluntary sector organizations. So once we recognize that this is a very complex context to operate in, with lots and lots of different relevant factors and relevant influences, we can then reach into the study of business as a field to try and make some sense of this. And we have two major elements to this. So the first is theory. So the development of a body of theory about business as a field. So management theory, how management interacts with its staff, how management activities can be organized, versus management practice, which is the actual activity of management being executed in an actual organization. So we can see that there is elements here for us to study and look at, that we do have a body of theory, whether it's in management or HR or operations or marketing, and it is very much connected to the practice of these business fields as well. So if we take the development of theory and the study of practice, what we do get really is a development of models. So what a academic model attempts to do is to take this huge mass of complexity in the internal and external environments and try and boil it down to a set of principles and a working understanding of a given situation that allows us to develop best practice, to develop an understanding of the ramifications of taking one action versus another action, to really model the broader situation into simpler terms, so we can generate real knowledge and therefore generate real value to our practice. So we want to connect the theoretical understanding of different parts of the business field with the actual practice of business itself. The problem that we have with these models is because we're studying human behavior effectively. Business is essentially the study of organized economic and commercial activity, but as executed by people. So it is at its core the study of people and people's actions. And the difficulty with that is that people behave in a wide range of ways depending on their own circumstances and their own inclinations. So we don't just have a single model for any given business activity, but we have multiple competing models. Some of them may be complementary, some of them may be overlapping, others may be very much at odds with each other. So they may be contrasting or conflicting models as well. This then raises the question of how exactly do we identify which models are useful to us and which models are not useful to us, or which models have relevance to reality and which models are not relevant to reality. Well, there is no clear answer to that, because that's why we have academic debate and discussion. We go by research. So continuous ongoing research, the development, refinement of theory, the connection to practice allows us to evaluate which models at any given time are actually relevant and useful and which are not. So it is important for us to understand that we don't just have the distinction between theory and practice. Theory being a conceptual understanding or a theoretical understanding of a particular activity, versus practice, which is the actual practical execution of that activity. But we also have a understanding of the relationship between models and research, and that models present one way or one view of how that activity actually functions, but we need research to bridge that gap between theory and practice. So research can be taken by will be carried out through observation, through active research, through talking to participants, talking to business people, talking to consumers, examining data that's being gathered by the government. It can be carried out in many different ways, but the one thing which connects all types of research, that it is based on the real world. Research is an activity which happens in the actual real world, rather than just being purely theoretical or purely conceptual. So as you can imagine, research will vary over time in certain time periods and contexts. Some models may not be given much weight or evidence. In other contexts, they may well be given a lot of weight and evidence. So we need to be constantly researching, but also as academics, which you guys are now that you're in university, you need to be keeping up with research whenever you're asked to write about something or evaluate a particular model. Don't just go and get an understanding of the model. You can also go into journal articles which publish research from scholars and academics around the world, and examine whether there is evidence for your particular model, examine whether there's evidence for your particular argument, or if you're writing a recommendation, look to see if there's evidence for your recommendation as well. That's really what we want to do in order to evaluate models and theories. We don't want to just rely upon the models or theories themselves. We need to have them backed by active research. In terms of evaluation, there are a few things that we want to try and avoid. The most important one is probably common sense. Now, that may sound a bit weird. Why are we leaving common sense aside? It's because common sense really can be better understood as being received wisdom. So things that we're told and things that everyone just knows because it's repeated and embedded within us, embedded within society. Received wisdom, whether it's expressed as common sense or it's just expressed as things that everybody know, really limit our understanding of what could be. They limit our understanding of actual activities. They limit our understanding of the reasons or causes for problems or issues. So we want to keep an open, flexible mind. We don't want to just fall back on common sense. So if you're developing or writing about a particular issue, what we don't want to do is see, this course of action won't work because it's a silly course of action. Everybody knows this. And just appealing to common sense or appealing to received wisdom. We want to be really a lot more precise and a lot more objective than relying on common sense or received wisdom. In the same vein, we also want to avoid being swayed by government interests or the closely related issue of business interests. So if a business tells us that this is the case, or if the government policy or law indicates that something else is the case, we need to recognize that business interests and government interests don't necessarily have objective truth as their measurement. Businesses, and this includes business firms as well as lobbying groups and other trade professional bodies, can be a really interesting source of information, but they don't necessarily tell us if a model is accurate. They have their own immediate interests at heart, and the same thing would go for governments as well.